gentlemen, boys and girls, sexy time is here. That's right, it's February, and it's Kill by Kill After Dark on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from the Hamilton Clinic, apparently named after my weirdness. This is Kill by Kill, and usually we're talking about horror movie characters in the order in which they die, but for February, we're focusing on the After Dark version of Kill by Kill, where we're looking at the sexier side of horror. And of course, there is only one person I trust when I need to get my bra off by Scalpel, the one, the only Gina Radcliffe. How you doing today, Gina?
Cutting off bra straps in this economy? Do you know how much bras cost these days?
Yeah. My note specifically about that section is I really hope Sybil Danning was getting hazard pay, because I'm telling you right now, I don't want anyone cutting off my bra with a real scalpel. That's not a portion of my body. Really, I'm not volunteering any portion of my body to get up close and personal for a scalpel session.
Yeah, especially cut off by someone who is going very much out of his way to not show so much as an inch of skin.
Well, I don't know what inches of his skin we need or want to see. Yeah, and everyone also can't touch his hair is what I'm
it's going to come off in their hand.
It's like graduation day all over again, where Sybil Danning just reaches underneath his scalp and lifts it off his head. That's what I was waiting for, but we were denied. Now, Gina, I don't want to scare you, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Now, you know her as a writer and a film producer, and of course her work as the director of the incredible Salem Horror Fest. And now she's a returning champion here to Kill by Kill, the one, the only, Kay Lynch. How are you doing today, Kay?
Cue the sassy saxophone.
There's an excessive amount of saxophone in this.
Oh hell yeah. And I just have to go on the record. You guys already went there, so I have to say that I am, watching this. I'm like, how are all these ladies falling for this creep? He's so ugly and weird, and then he does that with the scalpel. I'm like, oh, I get it.
I was gonna say, but remember, he was featured in People magazine, Kay. Come on.
Right.
That seems to be the social lubrication for Robert Vaughn in this, is that ladies, once you've been in People magazine, they're like, I guess I just throw myself at you. Seems to be a button you push.
I guess so. I mean, I guess there weren't many options in 1983. It was
a lean period.
It really was. Yes, if Robert Vaughn was the sexiest you could possibly get, then we're in serious trouble.
Absolutely.
Now, Kay, what was your introduction to The Hitchhiker?
Honestly, I can't remember exactly, other than I heard of its reputation of being an example of a positive portrayal of the trans experience. And when I saw, 1983, I don't know about that.
Right.
Yeah, that seems unlikely. Certainly.
It sounded, like, I don't know. And so I had to check it out, and I did, and I was like pretty blown away, because even today we don't see anything nearly as sympathetic or just authentic to the experience. And this is like a sleazy, exploitive story, and the trans character does become the villain in the end, or at least engages in villainous activity. But I think it's extremely cathartic. In most trans stories and exploitation films, the anxiety is we're put in the eyes of someone who's freaked out by the trans characters. Like, oh, this is so weird and scary, and the anxiety and the sympathy is supposed to be the person witnessing them. But here it's the exact opposite. All the anxiety is on Mita's side of being in this situation where you have a distracted doctor who you're under their care and not going to be going under the knife for. And it's really frightening.
I would agree with you. I was chatting with Gina before we logged on here. I have never been in any way, shape, or form frightened, moved, emotionally connected to any episode of The Hitchhiker. And this is the first time it happened. And it is weird that it is so exploitative. And yet when it comes to her character, they go out of their way to give her sections where she brings a human experience to this. One that lends itself to going, I care for this person, the position this person is in at this moment in time. Her speech when this intern comes in and says, if you're doubting what's happening, perhaps you should pause and wait. And she delivers a very heartfelt monologue about what has happened to get her to this point in her life. And she's not about to wait now. And the entire time everyone's chanting, no, wait, no, don't, no, don't. And it gets to the surgery scene and everyone's like, no, don't. There's no episode of The Hitchhiker that actually causes genuine human emotion before this. It starts and ends here.
Yeah, I was surprised that this is an island of good taste and even compassion, in what is otherwise a pretty, a sleazy episode where you've got someone, snorting coke off someone's boob and but it's just like, other than all the scenes involving her are written with some level of insight, which I was, particularly for 1983, which, that was, being grossed out by the trans woman was unfortunately a repeated gag over and over again, well into the 90s and beyond. So when I read what this episode was about, because I don't actually remember this one from its original run, I was like, oh boy, time to strap in, because this is not going to be handled particularly sensitively. And then I was very surprised.
Yeah, I related to this very deeply. Like, it is very authentic, at least in my experience. Of course, I can't speak to everyone, but for me, this really rang true. I actually just went through this procedure earlier this year. And so, it in a lot of ways, it's very accurate. And in the way, that monologue is really touching. And her character is handled with so much sympathy. And it's really sweet. And I just wrote a couple lines here. She said, I never knew there could be such pain for so long, waves of pain. I knew I wanted to be a woman. I am a woman. All I have gone through, and now I'm this close. Like, I've said those exact words because once I got our green light to move forward with the surgery, I waited 3 years, and once I got the approval, they were like, okay, we're going to go in 30 days. I was like, whoa, what? Do we have any other options? Yeah. 3 months later, we could do it. And I was like, hell no. Like, whatever it takes, we're doing it now. And it's just really refreshing to see.
Yeah, you kind of had to put all that anxiety, I'm awaiting getting a kidney transplant. So I will likely find myself in the same situation where it's like, okay, it's go time. And it's like, I don't have any time to think about, am I ready for this? It's just like, okay, it's right now. It's gotta, pack your bags. It's time. And it's terrifying and exhilarating. So it's interesting that they would have offer that sort of insight.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, please, Kay, go ahead.
I was just say, honestly, it's for the best to just kind of go, oh, it's happening now, because once it got close, there was 2 weeks where everything was in slow motion, and I was like, am I really doing this? And I got so scared. But if I had an extra 90 days to freak out about it, I don't know. It would not.
That'd actually probably be worse when you think about it, because then you had plenty of time to think up all the worst case scenarios and give yourself 10,000 panic attacks, and whereas if it's okay, it's it's going to be next week or exactly 30 days, you kind of go into that autopilot where it's like, okay, I just have to focus on, packing my bags and getting my paperwork finalized. And I don't have time to think about, what could go wrong.
That's exactly right.
It's fascinating in so many ways. And what I think weirdly enough, this episode is emblematic of is that the way people frame the trans experience, it's this monolithic thing when we all know it's as individual as anything else. And at this point in my life, I have been able to be friends with and met people before, after their transitions, met kids who are, gender questioning and moving through that world and having to deal with those issues of understanding who they are and knowing that it's not a definitive question that they can answer right now. All these things are very individual. When you confront these things individually, they are not strange and unusual. They are very, very common, and they all, you can't point to that and go, oh, that's a monolithic bad thing. No, obviously it's not. It's a human thing that people go through, and it is not about me in that situation. And why this is communicated so clearly in The Hitchhiker. HBO's The Hitchhiker.
HBO's softcore horror anthology.
Right. There's as many boobs in this episode of The Hitchhiker as any other episode. And yet it is able to, create a character that can clearly been given time and space to share a personal truth. And what happened, Kay, you could cast it as the villain. I think what she really is allowed to do is get revenge. Get revenge absolutely. The same way, the main character in Death Wish gets revenge. She's been wronged. She's absolutely been wronged. And so she gets a level of revenge. And I would argue not the level the person who needs the vengeance really deserves.
Agreed.
Oh yeah, look at that scarring at the end. It's like, oh man, just go to another plastic surgeon. You could get that scarring taken care of.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh no, you confronted Zorro.
Meanwhile, this poor woman looks like, on top of everything else, he dumped a vat of acid on her face, and all he's got is a couple little scars on one side of his face.
I don't think. The makeup here leaves a lot to be desired on almost all fronts.
I agree.
I don't quite understand the character Nina Russell. They make this big thing of obviously people noticing that in many ways she presents as feminine, but in her face she has masculine features. And you're like, okay, I get that concept. And then they reveal her and...
Oh no, she has a scar on her chin. That's all I noticed.
She's got kind of like a Bruce Campbell chin almost, and it's like,
and that as well, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, but people are doing double takes, and it's like, okay, I guess, sure.
I guess. I mean, she's got a giant cleft chin. Does it look slightly Dick Tracy villain-esque?
Yes.
Only because of the makeup, not because of the concept.
Yeah. No, she's 2 clicks away from Jim Henson's studio.
Yeah. I mean, would I ever, in my wildest dreams, think The Hitchhiker could even accomplish the physical aspects of this, nevertheless the emotional? I'm much happier that they actually focus their attention on the emotional rather than the physical.
Oh, yeah.
But that being said, I think part of the problem is they also say out loud, the best makeup is the makeup you don't see, and then go out of their way to show you every seam of the makeup on this person's face.
Yeah. And at the end, she's been totally fucked up in this surgery. And overnight, she does this makeup job that's incredible. And it's like, honey, that's a lot cheaper.
You had the ability to Mission Impossible your way through life before
this? She's wearing another woman's face.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, how did you fit the previous face? Why didn't you just fit the previous face underneath that face? I get the idea of surgery, and yet, like, she's doing the right. This is not her fault, everybody. But also, like every episode of The Hitchhiker, it's just lit within an inch of its life. Like, they bring in the Klieg lights so they never have to move anything. And it's not helping the makeup job. They just undercut that visual element of it, which is unfortunate because the script actually makes a lot of sense.
It really does. And especially in that consultation scene when she's laying down, and I'm like, honey, I'm like, it is not my place to say, to say what you may want to consider or not. But, because I've actually had a lot of people tell me, oh, but I'm going to miss your nose, or I'm going to miss, I had a cleft chin too. Oh, I'm going to miss the dimple of your chin. I always say, well, I'll put it in a jar for you. And like, this is my choice. Like, I don't care what you think about it, but like, it's, because it's clearly as this woman who is under this makeup. And so she's laying there under all of that light. It was like, oh, they could have maybe done a better job here. But
if they had gone a bit more subtle, it actually would have been more effective than the over-the-topness. But again, the Hitchhiker only has the over-the-top gear, which only makes the fact that she's allowed to be a real human being and space to state her dilemma all the more surprising. It just actually evokes a human emotion, and I just never would have expected that out of The Hitchhiker. It's just so out of pocket for the show.
Yeah, they could have, with a couple rewrites, they could have made her the typical duplicitous villain, and instead she talks about men reacting to her as if she's deceiving them in some way. And again, it's like, that's, and in a way that's like, heartfelt, and not in a way it's supposed to make the audience, feel like, well, it's your fault they feel that way. You're meant to empathize with her, which again, for 1983, that is wild.
It really is. And it really gets to the anxiety of the trans experience. Because like, I've been in that situation where I went home with someone I swore had to have known, like, this guy was a complete idiot. Because when he didn't, I realized, oh shit, like, Whoopi Goldberg, you're in danger, girl. I would not have gone home with him if I thought he didn't know. And it's, oh my gosh, it's so terrifying. So when the scene in this, I totally was like, ooh. But she's, the level of deception that she's employing here is like done in a way that is like Tales of the Crypt, Sweet Revenge. It's done in a way where she's like, no, like, I'm going to make this exactly what you deserve. And it like mirrors the conversation from before. And it is really satisfying.
Well, she's playing into his weaknesses, which is all of them. He has all the weaknesses.
Yeah.
So,
I think it would be faster to list his strengths.
Yeah.
Because that list would not be very long.
I'm pretty sure, as far as strengths, I'm pretty sure that toupee is bulletproof. But other than that, she plays right into, he's got places to go, but, maybe he'll put that aside so he can go get laid. I mean, because, it's easy to just, not go on a plane trip because, a sexy lady is checking you out. And, how easily his ego is stroked, and she's like honed in on all of his weaknesses. So while he thinks that, he's got some level of power over her for being able to, make her face, more aesthetically attractive, and she's also paying attention to him and see what makes him tick.
Oh yeah. Well, and in that first scene of them together in that like initial consultation in his office, he treats, there's some like tone in his voice. It's like, oh, well, my gender is reassignment, huh? And but ultimately it's not so bad. the part that's like when he kind of like sneers at the idea that they might be in the similar line of business because she's in makeup and he's in surgery, and he's very condescending to her in a misogynist way, like he as a woman, not for being trans. And that's another thing that I've experienced where I'm like, are you treating me like this because I'm trans or because I'm a woman? Because sometimes they're different. Sometimes
what a beautiful double-edged sword you found for yourself. Congratulations.
It is the worst kind of validation.
It's like, sex. Wait a minute.
You're laughing until I cry. This is great.
Yeah. But so at the end, it's like she's totally rubbing it in his face because he did not take her seriously, and she's like fuck you, dude, you couldn't even tell. Right.
She really hoists him upon his own petard, as it were. And just so people who might not watch the episode, which is like almost all of it, episodes of The Hitchhiker is available on YouTube. Dr. Christopher Hamilton, no relation, played by Robert Vaughn, with his chin consistently reaching for the stars, is a plastic surgeon who thinks a lot of what he does. He goes off in front of his intern students with a monologue that he repeats not once, not twice, but thrice. Of flesh is an illusion. Michelangelo worked in stone. I am a sculptor too. Okay. I assume he's not talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, right?
I mean,
he might be.
It was a party, dude.
But yeah, he's able to do surgery while doing other things. We see this with the interns. He's able to fuck somebody while performing surgery. So
that takes talent. I don't care who you are. That takes talent.
Yeah.
And it's Michelle Scarabelli, who is in one of my favorite shows, Alien Nation. She's so cool.
Oh, is that where
she's wearing way too much makeup in that operating theater?
But like, the eyes are the same. She has really crazy eyes.
Yeah, and her lipstick too. I'm like, this is a bit much for surgery.
It's been, but she's also making up, in the hotness department for everyone around her, which look like homunculi in white lab coats.
Yeah, especially the male intern, who is extremely sweet. He's like the only good person,
right?
Who's at the hospital.
Right. And like later on, he approaches, Dr. Hamilton, no relation, and says, what you're doing is incredibly skillful and everything, but I think like if I go into it, I want to, do it in such a way that helps the world with, burn victims. No. And he's like, son, if you want to help the world, join the Peace Corps. Like, do they have a killer plastic surgery brigade that I'm unaware of?
I was going to say, I mean, there is a great deal of use for a plastic surgeon who specializes in reconstructive surgery.
Yes.
And not like boob jobs.
Yeah.
But like Dr. Hamilton, no relation, is just so horny 24/7 that he can't listen to other people. He's overcome by his penis at all times when he doesn't have a scalpel in his hands. And then later when he does. So, as if HBO mandated boobs, at the 11-minute mark in his office, one of those interns is completely naked on his couch with a giant fan. And I mean, literally a giant fan for whatever reason. And then they're like, that's not enough. We need more boobs. And so she gets up and walks around the entire room so you can see that he has like Grecian and Roman figurines and statues in his office.
Right, like right off of the hallway. Like
he hands her a coat, like, put this on, then walk out the door. She's gonna need more than just that coat, my man.
I know. Yeah.
Like, did they fuck on that couch? Patients sit there. That's gross.
So gross.
Yeah, that's definitely a hygienic issue there.
She looks great though. She looks very pretty.
Oh, she's gorge. And then Dr. Just Asking Questions Jr. Later confronts Dr. Hamilton, no relation, outside of the office building. And this is where we meet Sybil Danning. And the camera just loves Sybil Danning.
Oh my God, that's it.
Just point at her for as long as it could possibly take. And I started to feel a little guilty ogling Sybil Danning, because it just doesn't seem right unless the theme song to Howling 2, Your Sister's a Werewolf, is playing in the background. Then it's okay.
All I will say is Sybil looks very excited to be there.
Yeah, she really does. Yeah, she even winks at, because he's like, I've seen all your movies, even the old ones. And he I did not think that was like a dig or anything. He was like, oh, I didn't mean it the way it sounded. I'm like, what do you mean? Okay. But I'm like, yeah, I saw Howling 2 as well. I'd be flabbergasted. I mean, this woman looks like she's from like a sex planet in outer space. Like she's way beyond any mere mortal. Like she shows up. It's like, wow, who is this lady?
So you can see why Robert Vaughn's character just simply cannot think straight in her presence. And he's just got he's supposed to be in a consult with Nina. He blows it off and then starts doing blow simply because Sybil Danning is in his orbit and he cannot help himself.
No, I mean, you would think just wait 2 more days until Friday, man.
Right? Jesus.
But then again, it is Sybil Danning.
Right. Listen, we all think we can think straight in pressure situations. And then Sybil Danning enters the room and the theme song to the Howling 2 starts playing in the background.
And she's cutting cocaine on her boobies. And it's like, well, all right, hold my calls, I guess.
That red lingerie, goddamn.
But even stranger is that once he makes the cut to her bra with the scalpel, the whole time you're holding your breath, you're like, oh no, and then he
I'm out. Oh yeah.
Keep going.
It's all right till it's right, and then if it goes wrong, it goes real wrong.
That's part of the excitement.
I'll take your word for it, guys.
It's the danger, don't you see?
The danger I felt in that situation was, again, that Sybil was going to go underneath the toupee and we were going to see what was really doing on that scalp. But while she's avoiding the top of his head, he's buried his face in her cleavage and then basically starts palming her face like a basketball. I like to think, I hate to brag, but I have had the sex, but is this what sex is? Because I have not palmed the face of my sexual partner quite like this in the middle of the act.
I honestly think it is probably the only time he's ever done something close to a sex scene.
Right.
And he's just I guess I should do this. I don't know.
Because
no comment.
He came in hot off the set of Superman 3 where his sister turns into a robot.
Hey, don't laugh. That shit is scary as hell.
I mean, I wonder if he's talking hey, you were in, your sister's a werewolf. I just came off a set where my sister becomes a robot. What if we put these two things together? And she's like, oh, can't say this. Put your hands in my mouth. That was a great visual gag, everyone, which is perfect for a podcast.
A non-video podcast.
And will remain so, everybody.
Look,
I did not get into radio to be seen. So, the next morning, who's still lying in bed, drugged out of his mind, not being turned into a werewolf, sadly, but Dr. Hamilton, no relation. And being honest, I've never been frightened by one frame of the Hitchhiker until this point. But when he comes in to that operating room going, ooh.
Well, he's got those liquor shakes. Yeah.
He touches his forehead with the back of his hand. That something bad is happening there. That is not a good sign.
Well, and everyone in that room is now guilty of what happens next because those other doctors should have stepped in. I'm like, you motherfuckers!
They're all like, should we say something? And like, no, nobody says anything.
Let's see if he pulls this off. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Cut to the worst happening.
Yeah. Well, and so again, having just had a procedure very similar to this. The lines on her face, I have questions. I'm like, why would they cut underneath her eyes like that? And that's going to scar no matter what. That's not how it works. So not to get TMI, but like they cut along my hairline and peeled my face down like a slice of pizza. I'm like, that's how...
I don't know why you're getting grossed out. I don't know why you're getting grossed out, Pat. That sounds cool as hell.
I'm not saying I'm grossed out. I'm just, it's not every day someone says they peeled my face like a pizza. You gotta give me that.
Like it was something I had to do to normalize what I was about to go on. Like just to kind of to make light of it because it was so intense. Because they also were like literally shaving my scalp. And I'm like, I have to like find a way to live with it, like this idea of what they're about to do. And now I'm like, that's the most punk rock thing anyone's ever done.
It is. I was going to say, that is badass.
But they do it along the hairline because your hair grows back and it covers up the line. And so they wouldn't just cut the front of your face.
No, like either the hairline or maybe like around the jawline where like it, you got kind of the natural shading that covers up any scarring or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, and for that, they would go through your mouth. And so I was very lucky because like I said, I had a cup chin and, they were going to like through my mouth, slice up my chin and like do some like plates and stuff in there. And instead they just like removed some fat from underneath my neck and injected it into my dimple. And I was like, thank you.
It's like, yeah, that sounds a lot better. Thanks. I like that option better.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Yeah.
And it was 8 hours. I was under for 8 fucking hours and there were like 10 people in the room. But if they had done that chin thing, then I would have been there longer, which I think is why they were like, you can't be under longer than that. So we're going to have to get creative.
Would you have had like, would your jaw would have been wired and all, or like would you have to like, be on like a liquid diet for a while or anything like that? Or?
Mm-hmm. Well, I already had to, even without that, I was on a liquid diet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I didn't have anything done to my jaw, and then there was just the injection in my chin. But it, the liquid things because I think my nose, I think, is why. But yeah, and so the other thing about this surgery is there's like, it's amazing how like many little procedures that can be done on the face. So when I went through, it was like, I don't know, I thought it would be a lot more simple.
Yeah, no, it's like every portion, every part's different, and the slightest change can really make a big difference to your whole face. Like when you see like a lot of actors who like get a nose job, they're like unrecognizable afterwards. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, here, I want this kind of nose. You can't just like shop out of a catalog what you want because you also have to work with what you already have, and it's also a very important distinction that this is not a cosmetic surgery. It's a gender affirmation surgery. And so it's treated very differently. And it's why I spent a lot of time in trying to find the right surgeon because I wanted a woman to do it. And there were so many men that I talked to. And some were like invented certain like techniques of everything, but I was like, no, I need a woman to do this because I do not want a man making me look the way he thinks I want.
Right. I was going to say that I feel like with a man, he'll be trying to project like how he thinks you should look, whereas you presumably had a pretty good idea of what your ideal results would be from the surgery.
Mm-hmm. And so the level of customization of my face that I had input on with my doctor, whom I love, was literally on a scale 1 to 10, 10 being the most feminine. What do you want? 10, please. Okay.
Can do.
I really did not. She told me what they were going to do, but I didn't really know. All I knew and all I cared was that they were going to erase my masculine features. And I was happy with that. So it's not like, can you do this? Can we do that? It's just they will know best in terms of like what to do to with the canvas that they have. And so it was really cool, and it makes it a lot easier to you don't overthink
to bring it back to the sleeves element here. Just such a heartening conversation. It's the results here, feel like you were able to get exactly as much of what you could possibly get out of it as you could. And that's all Nina wants. And of course, the universe of the Hitchhiker doesn't work that way. Mm-mm. And so when she gets out of surgery, they have this Twilight Zone-esque reveal of how she looks. And then later when they do reveal her face, there's some sort of Skeletor work.
Like I said, it looks like I guess you're supposed to get the impression that he just like hacked at her face with his scalpel. But it honestly looks like he just like knocked a beaker of acid on her face.
Yes.
Yeah.
She got the Phantom of the Opera operation.
Yeah, or like a Dementor kissed her and sucked the life out of her.
Yeah, like it's like did you like give her extra cheekbones? Like what did you do to her?
Why did she get the skullification series? Like you weren't really supposed to touch that area. Why?
Like I thought she just wanted her chin a little smaller. That's all. What have you done?
Oh yeah. Well, also,
he was only at work for like 5 minutes. How is this the end result of what happened?
It's also important to know that no matter whether it went well, like it could have been the best surgery, the smoothest surgery ever, you're going to look like a mess for a couple months. Like the fact that I was like, oh, don't freak out. It's like, well, no,
yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of like swelling and bruise. I mean, the bruising I imagine has to be like astonishing.
It was very scary. Yeah, I looked so scary, and once I started feeling like well enough to go out and trying to make, I just couldn't. Every time I looked in the mirror, I was like, I'm like E.T. and Jack. Like, oh no, that's how I felt. That's what I was just. And this was a successful surgery.
Well, maybe one day you'll be able to meet somebody at Airport Bar where velour meets indoor plants since 1977 and seduce a Dr. Hamilton of your own, complete with so much sexy sax.
Oh my God, these saxophones like shrieking by the time they're going up this escalator.
The saxophone is having an orgasm. Like Clarence Clemens is like, that might be too much saxophone. We might want to back up off of this.
Well, and girl works fast. Like overnight, she was able to do this like incredible makeup job that would get anyone else an Oscar. And, yes. But she also like figured out what flight he's going to be on. She somehow managed to secure an unused plane.
She's not completely stoned on painkillers, which I would expect she'd have to be. But I do like that reveal, that nice little twist of when she says she's a makeup artist, he thinks she means like applying cosmetics. And she's actually talking about, no, I do like, special effects makeup, which I thought was I thought that was a nice little twist at the end, because he immediately, whatever, you put blush on faces or whatever. But no, meant, no, I work with like prosthetics and stuff like that. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, in fact, me in the beginning of the show was I'm a secret shopper and I wore prosthetics on my face just to see how you were as a doctor.
And so she basically cons him into exposing where his ticket is, gets him to an isolated place, which happens to be an open airplane. Like you could just walk in there.
That pre 9/11 era, you just walk into an unused plane.
You're not using this right. We can hump here, right? And the ground crew's like, I guess we're not leaving for 45 minutes.
We're on lunch. Do whatever you want.
And so she sits him down, yanks off that prosthetic like she's in fucking Mission Impossible, and is like, I hope you like Robin Hood. On guard, motherfucker. And slices half of his face up good.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing because it does make it look like she goes to town on his entire face. Yeah. But like, and in the end, it's just like half his face. It's like, oh, come on.
Like, at least stab his hands so he can't go back to work. Like, it's not like every other minute he's like, my face, my face, my face. He doesn't really care about his face. Fuck up his hands. You want to get to him? Fuck up his hands.
Yeah. Take away his livelihood.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And she does, she like morphs her voice too, which is really eerie.
Right.
And again, like she had the ability to speak like that this entire time. Like in the beginning, it just seemed odd. It was like, okay, I get it in terms of putting on a show to like really fuck with this guy, but it just seemed really weird to see the ability that she had, and then that's how she presented in the beginning.
I think like, they had so much money in the research budget, and they poured all of it into actually listening to a trans person.
Yeah,
and I'm glad they spent the money there, but they didn't spend it anywhere else.
No.
There's no other research done in this. They don't like, where should we put these lines? Can someone change their voice? None of that. They don't like, this is the Hitchhiker, baby. You're on this ride. And so in the end, he's just mumbling to himself in a hospital bed with an ouchie. But really,
it's a pretty big ouchie, but I feel like, with another plastic surgeon could probably fix that up.
Yeah. Like stab out his eyes. So here's what the problem we have here is usually we choose our own death venture, where we decide of the deaths we see, which one would we choose if forced to and why. But there are no deaths in this episode. But there's one person who deserves a death. So we're gonna choose the own death adventure for this character that he should have gotten. And so think in your mind, where does this guy really need to get it, and how should he get it? Kay, you're our guest, and I choose you to go first.
Overdose, because then he would have never showed up to the procedure.
Sure. If he had died by sexual misadventure by Sybil Danning.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I don't want her to be at any more risk than is titillating.
She's very healthy. She's a very healthy woman. I think she would have been able to survive anything Robert Vaughn would have brought on, is my guess. So I think he would have just, this is too much for me, which I think most men would say in the scope of, oh my God, I'm in a bed with Sybil Danning. That's honestly
also,
truthful.
There was a lot of coke on that table too.
Right.
and yes. Alcohol. And so I just give me a clean heart attack, because then he won't hurt anyone else.
I enjoy that. Gina, what say you?
I think he needs a little more humiliation. So I would like to see him have purchased a sandwich from an airport cafe and have it painted, and then he just basically shits and or vomits himself to death.
Or preferably both, if you get it coming and going.
Oh yeah, everybody's had that level of food poisoning where you're just like a fountain. So I mean, it'd be great it'd be great if that happened to him, but it just didn't stop until he died.
Just a torrent. I think there's got to be some hand damage. You got to Amityville Horror those hands, where some just smashes right down on him, and he still feels it. he feels every bone in there get dusted, and they're just wet bags of blood at the end. Then you put the balls in the windowsill, and those go. I
was gonna say you could bring Sybil Danning back into it, and like have her like just like stomp on his feet with like those really really sharp stilettos.
I'm all for this. Death by Sybil Danning, and it's not sexual. I mean, she's sexual, but you're not getting any satisfaction out of it. You're just getting bloody body parts back until the point you can't take it anymore and you pass away, and you never pick up a scalpel again.
All of this sounds great.
We'll get our alternate endings like Clue.
Yeah,
exactly.
Here's how it could have happened.
Tim Curry just running the audience through.
Dear God, Sybil, you've got to get to this other room. So that just about does it. But before we go, Kay, where can people hear more about what you're doing and the festival and all that?
Sure, yeah. Well, you can catch up with me on Instagram on Video Coven, and also Salem Horror on Instagram. And the fest will return on April 25th and run through May 5th. And we got a lot of fun things planned. It's our 7th year, and it's a great time. I just have to emphasize how much nicer it is to come to Salem when it's not October.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Yeah. I have a friend who's like, "Oh, we got to go up there sometime." I'm like, yes, but not in October, please.
No, it's a shit show. It's not pleasant. But everything that happens in October happens every other day of the year. So, and it's actually it's a really pretty city. So, without the hordes of people, you can actually enjoy it more. We're a seaside community, and it is very nice. But yeah, so that's what I'll be working on for the next few months.
And you have fantastic guests that are there. I know that Faculty of Horror's been there a bunch.
Since the beginning, and they're back. They're coming back. So it's not the fest without them. They're part of the foundation of our event.
I worship at the altar of those two. They're incredible. And I think what you're doing up there is amazing. And hopefully one day I can make my way across the great United States to come and check it out, because I would love to do that. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about television and movies at thespool.net. I have a Substack, GinaWatchesThings.substack.com, and I am on most social medias except for Twitter under Gina Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. And of course, you can find us on all the socials with the exception of Twitter. Fuck that place. And of course, our Patreon, where we're doing extra bits for you that are super fun, chat by chat, bonus episodes, movie commentaries, and so much more. Rate and review us on your podcatcher of choice. It helps us be seen and heard by more people. Thanks, everybody. Don't worry, folks. The erotic body count will continue next week. For myself, for Gina and Kay, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.